All right, there we go. Hello and welcome everybody to today's little webinar workshop called The Missing Link in Dance Training, Brain Integration. Thank you for being here and committing an hour and 15 of your time and perhaps some more if you choose to stick around at the end for the Q&A. My name is Mariah Jane Thies. I'm here in beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, speaking to you all around the world, and it is my great pleasure to share this wonderful information with you. Now, before I tell you any more about me, because really you're here to learn something, let's actually do a little activity first. Then I'll tell you a little bit more about me and them. So we'll kind of go back and forth. We're all movers here. We don't want to just sit and listen the whole time. And I'll let you know as well, all of you here live, thank you again for doing that. Those of you not able to be live, obviously you're watching a replay, so you can pause at any time to take notes. Those of you here live, you'll still get the replay, okay? So feel free to take notes if you want, but if you just want to experience it, let it wash over you, knowing that you can pause if there's something you want to write down, you can do that on the replay link. So just make sure you know that. I find that I do learn from writing things down, but when I can do it for something like a replay and pause, I can write something down and have a little moment of reflection. So my suggestion is to just let it wash over you if you're here live. All right, now to get started, we're gonna do something that might seem really easy. I don't know, might seem really hard. Let's just stand up, please. All we're gonna do, and I say all we're gonna do as if it was super easy, just gonna take a moment. My suggestion is to be parallel, but it doesn't have to be like a perfect parallel. If you stand with a bit of natural turnout, which I'm sure many of us do, then just stand there, arms relaxed by your side, and let's just stand here and do a little body scan. Okay, that's all we're gonna do, just a little body scan. So I can go from the ground up or from the top down. And I'm gonna be quiet for a moment so that we can all do that. You're not out to change anything, by the way. So if you notice that your weight is, say, back on your heels or something, you don't need to change it, just notice. Okay, so I'll guide you through just a little bit. Let's start from the ground up. How's the pressure on your feet? Does it feel even? Are you standing more to the right foot or more to the left foot? How is your weight on your tripod of your foot? Are you noticing that you're centered and didn't have to do anything about it? Or does your weight really want to go back under your heels and ever the dance teacher, you work to correct yourself? How are your knees? Are they straight without being stiff or locked? So that if I wanted to go into a little bouncy plie, I could do that in just a moment. And I have access to my plie. Then move up to your front of the hip joints. How are they feeling? Is there anything gripped around through the hips into the turnout muscles perhaps? How does the sacrum feel? Take a few plies. Does your sacrum nutate, meaning are the curves of the spine responding right through into the pelvis? Now, if that sounds like new information to you, I'll be sure in a follow-up email to let you know about my dynamic body workshops where I did spine, pelvis, and whatnot, and talked about the fact that the curves of the spine, including the sacrum and the pelvis, change depending on whether we're in flexion or extension as far as the hips concerned, okay? So how does that feel? Moving your way up, how does your breathing feel? Is there a natural three-dimensional breath? Or again, once I've said that, did you kind of have to talk your way into having a natural three-dimensional breath? Meaning maybe it wasn't so natural if you have to talk yourself into it. Again, moving your way up, how are your shoulders feeling? Does it feel like your arms are able to hang nice and neutral beside you, or did you have to adjust somewhere in the back muscles to open up through here? Scanning up to the neck, and then particularly the very top atlanto-occipital. How is that feeling? Are you like a little bobblehead there, nice and free? Yeah. Okay. So just remember that, kind of like a snapshot, a picture of how you're feeling right now. And we're going to start right away, just giving you just a few brain gym movements to see how we do. And I'm also going to do one more thing of noticing with a little bit more intention. So let's notice our side to side ability, the ability to shift from side to side. And I'm going to use the fancy word of side being lateral. So we're actually checking our laterality. How easy is it to shift to the right? How easy is it to shift to the left? Do they feel different? Are you feeling like you are muscling through it, overriding an instinct, or pushing through even the tiniest bit of resistance? How is it for balancing on that leg? If I just go ahead and shift and pick up. Do I have easy breathing on one side? Perhaps, oops, I held my breath when I went to the other side. So when I'm checking to see how things are working, I'm always checking, is my breathing naturally still three-dimensional? Or was there any held breath that snuck in there? I'm also checking that my jaw and the top of my neck is feeling free. Okay, so that's our laterality. And as we go through the work, you'll understand this is our laterality dimension, and it is connected to the idea of the two hemispheres of the brain. But we'll come back to that. Now let's do some down and up. So I'm going to take just a little plie and rise. How's that feeling for you? Again, it's not about, am I doing a perfect rise, but more just sort of this idea of like my inner ball. Is it able to bounce down and up easily? Which has a lot to do with my core not being strong or actively engaged that could potentially hold my breath, but more just, is there a resiliency and a communication from hip and shoulder on the same side, and hip and shoulder on the opposite sides? So how does that feel? Does it feel like I can go down easily? This isn't necessarily about, any knee pain or anything, but can I go down? Can I come up? Again, how's my breath? Did my eyes glaze over, or am I still free with my eyes? Okay. And this is referred to as our centering dimension when we get talking about in the brain, and we'll come back to it. So just notice where you are. Then we're going to do forward and back. So I'm swaying a little bit forward on my feet and then a little bit back. And how does that feel? Does it feel fun? Or does it feel like, oh, everything grabs and it's actually maybe even a bit scary to go forward, or more likely a little scary to go back? How does that feel? Again, I'm checking with my breath. Is it still going, or was there a held breath moment or a jaw tension that snuck in there? This forward and back in this material we call our focus dimension. I can be perhaps neutral, or I can be over focus, or I can be under focus, being back. And I think we all want to know more about that weight placement one, don't we? And we'll get to that. All right, so you're noticing your three dimensions. Okay, no effort to change it or modify it or control it. Just notice where you are. And now we're going to do just two little movements that can help to integrate. First one we're going to do, I'm going to come closer to the screen here, is something called the thinking caps, where we're going to go along the curve of our ear using usually like your thumb and your second and third finger, and we're going to be uncurling the curl of our ear. Now, before you do that, do one more check, because this is really fun. And this is the one that if you decide, hey man, I'm going to try this in my dance classes, this one tends to get buy-in from students right away, because I'm going to go with like 99% of people go, oh my gosh, that worked. How come that worked? That was really cool. So what did it work for? Well, let's just do a little check of your head and neck mobility, just turning from side to side. And of course, students then love this. You can do this before pirouettes, let's say, where you want an easy ability to have a good rotation there for your spotting. So just check where you're at. I like to sort of look and go, oh, my nose lines up with, you know, this spot on the text on the side of this magazine or something. And then I'm just going to keep where I was. Again, we're going to take the thumb behind the ears, second and third finger in front. I like to start from the top and work to the bottom. I'm uncurling my ears. And I'm squishing pretty hard too. So we've got about 400 acupressure points on your ears here, which you're stimulating by doing this. You've also got great leverage for all of the plates and the sutures there on your skull. So after I've done about 3 or 4, and I can feel my ears getting pink and warm underneath my fingers, I like to just pull out for a moment and feel like I'm releasing my skull a little bit. And take just a few breaths there. Okay, and then drop your arms down. Give your body and brain system a moment to go, okay, what did I just learn there? And then go ahead and turn your head and see if you have any more mobility. Even though you didn't stretch anything, you're like, oh. And those of you there on the live and seeing the picture, if you can actually feel anything different, go ahead and give me the feedback of just like a hand up or a thumbs up. If you actually go, well, you know what? It actually moved more. You're right. How weird is that? And I'm going to say it's weird and it's wonderful. We're probably not going to get to all the reasons why this worked. Just go, hey, boom. Here's your first sort of serving of something that can help you. And again, like I said, I always get good buy-in after doing this because they go, I don't know why it worked, but that was awesome. Tell me more. So I am going to do one more with you. And this is working a little bit on our energy systems. Okay. In this work, which is the Brain Gym world, and I'll tell you a bit more about that in my intro, is draws a lot from traditional Chinese medicine, Meridian work, energy flows, and how that even works for our muscles being resilient or more tight. And we're going to look now at the kidney meridian. And the reason we're going to look at the kidney meridian is it's really, really related to fear, anxiety, all that sort of stuff, and therefore stress. Okay, so we're really talking about stress here. And again, I'll have a picture for it later for you today, but the start of the kidney meridian is on the ball of the foot. The end of the kidney meridian, what they call K27, are these spots up here that are easily accessible, and that's what we're going to touch right now. So I'm going to take a C shape with my hand. There's just sort of your natural C shape. Find your collarbone or your clavicles there and go underneath it. And then the C shape that you have naturally is probably close to the right size to be on either side of the top of the sternum. And there's these little indents there. Now I'm going to go ahead and encourage you to stand up while we do this. Okay, so before you go, let's take the hand down one more time. See where you are on your feet. We've done those checks earlier. Where are you naturally on your tripod? Now go ahead and move again under the clavicle and then in on either side of the sternum. The other hand can rest gently on the belly button. And I'm going to rub these spots. They're little indents, and I'm just going to rub like little circles on them. This is the end of the kidney meridian related to fear and anxiety. Okay, I'm going to help calm my nervous system even more by having my eyes track from side to side, as if I was looking out on the horizon, a beautiful vista, looking out on the horizon. And you can even say to yourself like, oh, isn't it beautiful? And it's all clear. So as my eyes track side to side, I'm noticing whether my eyes are able to track smoothly, particularly through the center area, or whether they jump about. Okay, so I'm just moving side to side, and I know I have more to do because when I go from right to left, they jump. Okay, so all is clear on the horizon. You can even say to yourself like, there's no predators, there's nothing to fear out there, all is well. I think this would be a really cool thing to do out on a stage just before the audience is let in for a recital. You can look therefore out to the distance. Let's switch hands. Out to the distance to say like that audience is all good. No threats. Okay. Now, if your weight had been naturally wanting to shift back onto your heels, you may find that doing this allows you to naturally shift more onto the tripod and more pressure on the base of this kidney meridian. I have a theory, and I have to be honest and say it's just a theory. Okay, just finish rubbing there and just notice how you are. And by the way, if they were tender, I don't usually believe in no pain, no gain, but in this case, if they were tender, it actually means you kind of need it. You can think of it like that kidney meridian, one of the ends is a bit clogged. And so here's my theory, as I come back to the camera for you, is that students who have their weight back all the time, that point on the ball of the foot, it's almost like you're avoiding it. Like it's like the sort of, oh, I don't want to touch the hot stove. And I'm kind of avoiding being there because it'll trigger all that fear. So this is a great thing to do to kind of calm and center you on your feet. Okay, so I don't know if anybody had noticed they were back and then shifted forward more easily. If you did, go ahead and give me the feedback of, oh, wow, okay. So maybe you don't always need to correct dancers by saying, wait forward. You might need to go, maybe they've just got a little bit of a fear programming running, and to release that, they naturally shift. Wouldn't that be awesome? So yes, it would be awesome. That's what we're here for. Okay, so now I'm going to do a little bit more of an introduction now that we've made sure we've gotten some movement. And by the way, all those things we just did are going to help you be in a learning state for what's to come. So I hope those of you watching it later did actually do it with me. You're in a better learning state now simply by participating in that. Okay, so here comes a screen share for you all. Okay. And play. Oh, come on. I want it to go big. It's not big for you guys yet, is it? There we go. Okay. All right. So just a little bit more about me so you know who you've already listened to now for the last 20 minutes. Again, my name is Mariah Jane Thies. I've been teaching for, gosh, 35 years now. And in a chunk of that time, about 10 years ago, I had been a studio owner for 10 years as well. Biggest thing to know about me is that I'm a self-confessed learnaholic, and I've been learning and working on this stuff for, gosh, so long. The work I'm sharing with you today, I first started working on in about 2008. So it's been still quite a long time, and I believe it's part of a never-ending journey. My qualifications, for those of you who want to know that, yes, I'm an RED registered teacher, mentor, and supervisor. I think it was back in '97 I got registered, so that's been a while too. I'm an Evans, this means Bill Evans, Laban certified modern teacher. I do have, I didn't put it there, a dance degree from Grant MacEwan College in Alberta, Canada. And the part that's of particular interest perhaps for you today, because of the material we're covering, yes, I am a licensed brain gym consultant. And the part down there, the BRMT licensed consultant, stands for Blomberg Rhythmic Movement Training, which is referring to the reflexes that we have, our primitive and postural reflexes, and knowing how to work on integrating those. Okay, a little bit more about me. Oh, hang on. Why is it not forwarding? Oh, gosh darn. Why does there have to be a technical issue? Oh, my computer just keeps beeping at me. I have no cursor, people. I can keep talking, but I can't show you my, oh man. Oh, no, there it goes. Okay. Phew. My stress was going up. Maybe that was teaching me to see how I can manage my stress in front of you all, where I'm like, why is that not working? Okay, there I am getting certified with Dr. Paul Dennison and his wife, Gail, the two creators of Brain Gym, which a lot of this work is going to be linked to. Gail Dennison also had a considerable amount of dance training, so she's been a great resource talking to her. Okay, and then there's Dr. Harold Blomberg, sadly no longer with us, but I did get to finish my studies with him several years ago. All right, and then the big one is going, here you all are in a way, I'd say you're already part of the tribe because you showed up. I have had the name Radiant Dancer and Radiant Teacher for probably a decade because I love the idea of this inner light ready to come out, that it's all in you. Let's just remove the layers to see the light, as well as this idea of sharing it. So, you know, I'm on stage like a star sharing it, or I'm a teacher with it all radiating out. So I hope that it's not just going to be me within a very short period of time who can, you know, maybe you're not going around saying I'm a radiant teacher, but that you're feeling you're a radiant teacher. You know what you're sharing, and you know that the way you're doing it is about helping yourself and your students take off the barriers, take off the layers that might have been dimming their inner light. I believe we all have it already in us, and it's just a matter of removing a bunch of layers. It's almost like I have this wonderful image read in a really cool book about, like, if we're all a diamond and a very many multifaceted diamond. However, for some of us, our lives have been such that some of those facets are a little bit dirty, and all we need to do is just clean them off. And so this work to me isn't so much about teaching people things to do. It's about cleaning off some of the facets and releasing the potential all within us. So that to me is why I came up with Radiant, and it spoke to me. It actually came to me during a guided meditation. So I trusted it right away. I went, okay, that's it. Radiance is the word. And along with that, though, to try to have like a tagline, what is it really about? I'm putting it down to 3 things at this point. Okay, integrated, embodied, and expressive. If those 3 things are working for you, you are a radiant dancer. Or in our case, we're a radiant teacher. And what does it really mean to be a radiant teacher? You're in that place and you're helping them to get there too. So I hope you are wanting to join the tribe with me and make this happen on a, well, now that we're all connected internet wise, really easily, make it a global movement. Okay, now I said integration first because integration does come first. I can't be fully embodied, so all the great anatomy stuff, again, the work I did back in April, which I can share with you all if you didn't already see it, to be embodied and to really feel and understand all the great anatomical knowledge in the world fails to connect or even be truly learned if I'm not in an integrated brain state. Once I'm integrated and therefore embodied, now I can be expressive, and in particularly my personal uniqueness can be expressed. And I can stand like that little one out there feeling like a star. There she is, radiating out like a star on stage, ready to go. So integration comes first, and that's what we're talking about today. And it's very much linked with this here, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Some of you may have seen that before, this idea of what do we have to take care of first? What are the layers that we need to do? In this case, we're talking even not just about cleaning your facets, but just being able to learn. So when they're in the studio, are we actually really getting traction with our learning? You can look at this more maybe on the replay, read it all, but just understand, say the base of the pyramid is my physiological needs. I need to know I've got air, water, food, shelter, sleep, I'm clothed, you know, so I'm feeling safe. That's the part I want you to really see here, is that all the other stuff. So if you're working, let's say at the green level, giving your students positive comments to build their self-esteem, but they don't feel safe, it's not sticking. It's not going to really happen. We've got to feel safe first. And to me, that's 2 pieces. That's feeling safe in our bodies and feeling safe in the environment. And of course, they're very interrelated. Now, moving along, looking at what, you know, again, a great debate. It would be a really wonderful debate, actually, to talk about what the pillars of dance training are. But having been in this industry for a long time, there's so much material out there about helping dancers to become strong, flexible, debatable there on that picture whether we'd actually talk about over flexible and that craze that's going on right now. And the coordination, the idea of being able to put it all together, build some steps. I have been part of the Bill Evans dance world since 1999 and got introduced to the developmental movement patterns at that time. And was able to see about connectivity on a level that I hadn't had yet in my ballet training. So a lot of the modern world is into that idea of connectivity, those inner pathways. And that's getting you a little bit more mind and body, because I'm thinking of my core distal pattern perhaps while doing a développé. But the piece that I feel is still missing, and I'm, being my tribe leader here trying to put out there, is this idea of integration. And I've made it bigger, and it's not a perfect pyramid. Maybe I need to put in a pyramid, but that without integration, I can't have my connectivity. I can't work on my coordination and just know that, well, no, I'll just a few more good cues and it'll be great. That step will come together and my muscles will be naturally flexible because they won't have tension, and then I'll be able to gain real strength. Without the integration, though, I think all of that's missing. So again, I'm so glad you're here. There is amazing resources out there for the strength and flexibility. I've heard nothing but good things, for instance, say the progressing ballet technique and all that work. I've heard great things about that. I have no doubt it's great. I'm always curious though, is the student doing it getting the full benefit or not? And to me, that would depend on whether there's an integration going on. It's a little bit more about my layering now on the integration. So from the bottom up, there's the arrow there. All that can happen when I have an integrated brain, when, and we will teach you what that means. I can then integrate the primitive reflexes that I have from in utero to about the first 2 years after birth. Those reflexes are programming and blueprints within our nervous system that get us moving, give us the tone of our muscles, and we cannot override them. And if your first 2 years or so in life had any hiccups, in my case, I had pneumonia and practically died when I was 6 months old. So although I kept growing, I would not have had some of the movement experiences that would have helped to integrate my primitive reflexes. And when they're not integrated, think of like building, this is me building the skyscraper. My foundation wouldn't be very strong. And therefore, if there's the earthquake, so in Vancouver here, we're in an earthquake zone. So, I've built this beautiful skyscraper. In this case, you can say, I've been taking high-level dance classes, but when you add a little piece of stress, a primitive reflex, like the foundation, was a little shaky and it shows up. And you can see this. I don't know if any of you are going to watch the Olympics coming up this summer, but or even high-level sports of any sort, team sports and whatnot. And they talk about people choking, where you're like, oh my gosh, they've hit that ball or whatever tens of thousands of times successfully. And then when the stress comes, like the gold medals on the line, suddenly they screw it up. And you're like, how did that happen? And everybody knows it's about stress. But the cool thing is, this is a little bit more about, well, what do you mean stress? That's such a nebulous word to say. What do you really mean when you say about stress? And it could be their foundation got rocked just enough that an unintegrated primitive reflex showed up and had their body do something they did not expect. And one of those that I'll just share with you now is what's called the ATNR, and that's short for asymmetrical tonic neck reflex. And when you're a baby, you're learning and wiring your sidedness, your right-sidedness and your left-sidedness. And with that, it's linked with a head turn, an arm reach, and my hand opens. And we won't worry about the legs because I'm just sitting right here, but there's a leg action as well. That as soon as I turn my head, my hand opens and my arm turns this way. Okay, that is a specific reflex that helps babies learn to turn their head like they're on their tummy and not wanting to suffocate, right? So they're turning their head from side to side. And it's teaching us the ability to have this side is separate from this side. That needs to happen before they can communicate. Now, if that reflex isn't that well integrated because those movements were not done as babies, you can imagine a person doing a port de bras, nice soft hand, elbow lifted. You remind them to turn their head and suddenly splat. That would be a reflex that suddenly popped up. Okay. Now that reflex may need specific work for integration, or it could be if we are doing our jobs as radiant teachers to help them be in an integrated state, you can kind of say the earthquake didn't rock so much. And maybe that reflex is still there, but it doesn't show up in their dancing, which would be wonderful then. Now, after the foundation of the primitive reflexes is our postural reflexes, the natural ability to stand properly. I do not believe that most posture needs to be taught. And if it does need to be taught, it means there's a missing piece going on here. Okay, our ancestors didn't need posture class just to be able to stand up with good, resilient cores. Yes, you could say a lot of it would be movement, and I'm with you if you're thinking, yeah, and the average kid these days doesn't move enough, and so we've really got to do that in dance class. But again, if the postural reflexes are there, we're good. Then we move on to the developmental patterns that I mentioned, part of the Laban and Bartinia. For those of you who want to check that out, I'll send you some resources on that. Then the basic movement skills, your run, hop, skip, jump, a lot of what we do with the littlies, the 3 to 6 year olds, making sure their basic movement skills are there, and then the refined movement skills of dance. So if you look at that, if you're spending your days on the refined movement skills of dance and you're getting frustrated, you're getting tired and burned out by always saying the same thing, you feel like a nag perhaps because you're always feeling like you're their auxiliary brain reminding them of something, it might be that we need to go down a layer. We need to make sure the basic movement patterns there, or movement skill, then, oh, maybe a movement patterns there, not there yet, or maybe a reflex. And the cool thing is, if we have an integrated brain, these things can either emerge as they were already meant to be, or they can develop more. Okay, and I've got just an interesting little bit about that. At 10 years old, I was out on the playground jumping rope, like where the 2 people are on the both sides and going. And I swear to you, it was number 13, like curse number 13, Pepper. And the rope caught my ankle. So I didn't just twist my ankle. I jumped full force down onto my ankle with it twisted because the rope had caught it. Yeah, that hurt. Strangely, I walked home. And I think the reason I walked home is I had severed it so much that I didn't have feeling in there. So yeah, okay, the ligaments and tendons and all that stuff eventually had to heal. But what had actually happened is that on the side that, you know, I twisted here, but this side, the bone had crushed. And I wound up with a little bone chip in there that rattled around and caused me to not trust my left side, because anytime the bone chip was in the way, of course, the function wasn't there and I'd fall over. And through my teens, I was labeled quite the klutz. In fact, my parents didn't even let me get my driver's license till I was 17, because they go, we're not gonna let you be behind the wheel of a car. You're such a klutz. And I keep going, but my ankle clicks. Anyway, point here is that what also happened with the pretty excessive trauma of that is my arch fell. I suddenly had a flat foot on my left foot, not my right. So I knew all my development of properly lifting my arches had happened, but my left foot fell. So when this finally became discovered, not till the age of 17, of like, oh, guess what we discovered? You do have a problem in your ankle, and, you know, got into the surgeries and all that to remove the chip. I was given orthotics, of course, to lift that arch up. And I went through probably till about 35 with orthotics whenever I could, and a prescription to get a desk job. That piece, of course, I clearly didn't listen to, because I said, well, no, I love dancing and I'll deal with it. And by deal with it, I meant I'm dealing with a foot that's kind of unstable, the flat foot there, and a very limited plie. And I thought I had just worn away the cartilage and that was it. I always, you know, just tell students I've got like an 80-year-old ankle on one side. Sorry, it's the best I can do. Then I discovered about these developmental patterns and went, oh, maybe there's things that can change. And I got on a journey to change it. Then I got into the brain gym world and the reflex world and got on this journey to change it and go, I'm going to re-trigger my arch to lift. But the really interesting piece is, until I dealt with being in an integrated brain state the majority of the time by doing enough of this work and cleaning up stressful things in my life, my arch wouldn't lift. Once it finally got sorted out in my nervous system, the work I'd been doing to lift my arch suddenly clicked. It was like a paper jam suddenly got going, and all the work that I'd been doing suddenly turned on. And I'm happy to say that even today, I can feel that my left foot is still getting stronger and changing and catching up to back to the way it was before this injury. And so, you know, that injury has given me a lot of pain and trouble and all this stuff. But boy, oh boy, has it been a teaching thing to go, first of all, things can change. And second of all the strengthening in the world didn't matter until my nervous system was ready for it. And what did that mean? I had to get my brain sorted out. So now let's talk about the brain. This work that we're talking about was first developed back in the 1970s, this idea of the triune brain, so meaning 3 different parts. If I was to have a discussion with a brain surgeon, perhaps they'd go, you're really oversimplifying things. And I'm going to say to you, yes, I sure hope so, because the brain's pretty complex. We're not here to have a whole big brain discussion. Let's just look at it in a really simple way that assists us in making decisions about how we're wanting to teach our students or how we're choosing to make sure we're in a good learning state. So the big piece of it there is the labeling. Let's have a look. You can see the bottom sort of beigey yellow bit there is called the reptilian brain. That is, you could, without getting into an evolution discussion here, you could say that's how we started. We're just surviving, we're breathing, we've got our heart rate, body temperature, all that's just happening. And our instincts are there. The instinct may be for an animal to hunt for food. Well, that's survival. So all of that, you know that, yeah, maybe mommy cat teaches little kitten a little bit about hunting, but kitten would still know how to hunt even if mom didn't teach him. It's an instinct. We all have our instincts. Then the green there, the mammalian brain. So the mammals come along from the reptiles and develop the idea of wanting to nurse their young, living together, and basically caring and bonding with each other. So this is the part that's also called the limbic system. It's where all various, and system because there's various pieces, like the amygdala lives in there and all that, where that's our scanning for danger. So our mammalian brain is related to emotions. And then the neocortex, neo meaning like new, the new part of the brain is where we have the 2 hemispheres with the right and the left doing their jobs, if you will. Okay. And yes, there's a lot of cross communication. In fact, we hope so. Now, another cute little picture that I found of the idea of the little reptile, then the mammal. And I guess that would be an ape there talking about the ability to have more thinking. And I just think that's an adorable picture, all that snuggled up in there. Now, our goal here, when I'm using the word integrated, is the idea of all of those pieces working together. I always want to have my instincts, I want to have my emotions, and I want to have my rational thinking. If I was only in my rational thinking, well, life wouldn't be that enjoyable. Where's my bonding? Where's my connecting? And by the way, your limbic system is where memories are made. So to me, it's actually where a lot of the learning really is. That's where it gets imprinted, is a memory. Something's important, I've got it, and then I can build on it. So moving along, why is this important? Well, we want them all integrated, but they're not always all integrated because we are always leading with survival first. Go back to that hierarchy of needs, always worrying about our survival first. In fact, you could argue that your brain is just there for the very act of survival. And that would be true for like the little sea squirt or something where all they need to do is exist. We're moving beyond the existence, but this idea of our survival is still there with us at all times. So when we have a threat, ooh, I missed one picture, hang on. When we have a threat, yeah, there we go. When we have a threat, there's going to be a response, either the fight or flight or an extreme freeze. And a really quick story about that happened to me is I live where there's just a little bit of a green belt in the backyard, into the backyard there. And I had been sitting outside reading in the sunshine. This is about 2 years ago. And then I leave the door open and come inside to my office where you see me now to get another book or whatever it was. I'm rummaging around in here. The door had been open. It's the only door to my place. I'm on a ground floor. And I hear something fall, like it fell off a shelf or something. I'm like, that's weird. Like, I don't think I had anything overly precarious out there. So I thankfully heard that and kind of creep around the corner to be able to look. There is a bear in my kitchen, rummaging through the baker's rack there, and had pulled stuff off. You can imagine I had a response. So in picture, instead of the tiger there, there's a bear in my kitchen. Oh, by the way, it means he came in through the door, so he's blocking my only exit. As a brain gym nerd, I found it fascinating because I could feel myself freak out. I came into my front office, shut the door for whatever good that would do, hopped up on my desk and started hammering like crazy to the floor above me for help, because even though I have a window right here, my instincts had taken over of, well, I wasn't going to fight it because I would lose. I couldn't flee because he's at my door. And I was so frozen, I could not figure out how to open and take out the screen to be able to exit. I had to bang and bang and bang and bang and scream out the front window until a neighbor came over so that we could, finally get me out that way, because this bear came in and out for like 20 minutes. Yeah, anyway, it was fascinating to go, I'm still aware, but what I'm aware of is that I can't think. And I cannot do a simple task of getting myself out of harm's way. It was pretty fascinating. So if you wonder if you really have it, that fight and flight response, it's good to know that you have it. I have to admit, I was a little disappointed that I had too much freeze going on, but might be because, of course, I also knew I didn't have an exit. Now, what does this mean for you and your dancers? Well, going back a little bit, the truth is that's a pretty rare experience. And hopefully all of you live safe, happy lives, but we're going to have responses to general, everyday, chronic stress that has a similar action. So let me just go back there. So if survival's our priority, and no matter what happens, it's got you first. Okay, well, survival with a bear, yeah, okay, I don't mind getting into a fight or flight so that I know to get the heck out of there. But if it's a chronic stress, then it's just taking me out of my feeling and my emotion and my emotions, my ability to create memories and therefore learn, and my actual thinking and all the functions there. So a little first tidbit would be, as a teacher, you got to teach from the bottom up. Safety for the learning, safety in the environment, all that must come first. Then the emotions and the making meaning and some social engagement with each other in the class comes next. Then you can deal with the thinking. And we often start at the top because we're here to teach them new things to think about, perhaps. But none of that's really going to work, and you're going to find a lot of repetition and whatnot if they are not taken care of from the ground up first. So let me go back through here. And just a little quick about little note about holding breath. That it can be, there's smoke, say, coming in, or somebody drowning there. Both of those things, the idea of something stressful that's going to hurt us, like the smoke or the water coming into our lungs, would make us hold our breath. So that's good. Let's not breathe it in. Let's not breathe in the water. Let's not breathe in the smoke. Okay, so it's a response to something stressful on the outside. But we also know that I can hold my breath as a cause of stress. Okay, another reason I didn't put in here a little picture would be, again, that bear, thankfully I didn't say anything and he had enough food to interest him. But another response that I did feel in my body was holding my breath. I don't want the bear to smell me or hear me. Oh, cat alert, yeah. Smell me or hear me or be able to tell from my breath that, oh, there's something there. So we hold our breath when we're stressed. But the interesting piece is it goes both ways. So if I do a cue to a student that causes them to use their core in such a way that they hold their breath, that's triggering a stress response right there and pulling them into their survival brain. And for all of us worrying about the the masks and what that's doing for all of our breathing. Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine the increase of stress simply because of that feeling of breath being interfered with. Okay, so keep that in mind with cues. All right, and the other thing that happens when you are in a pretty good stress state is the tendon guard reflex. This is the back of the body, everything tightens up, and you can see it's like it gets me on the balls of my feet. Why? So I can box around maybe to fight, or so I can run. Or there's like a body armoring that happens so that if I did get swiped from that bear, I'm actually going to bleed less profusely, and maybe I would get some help. All right. So it's possible that for some students that appear to have a tight Achilles or small plie, that it's actually their body in a stress response. In fact, it's very likely that it's that. So doing something called the calf pump, which is a movement similar to a Achilles stretch, a calf muscle stretch like you'd normally do, but coupling it with breath appropriately, that's what can calm and release that. So it's a slightly different attitude to let's stretch our calf muscles to let's release the stress from our calf muscles, doing it when we breathe out. So let's just do a moment of that. I'm going to show you that. So all it is, and you're welcome to try it with me, of course, is I'm going to move back enough so you can see me. I'm going to have my heel up, and as I put my heel down to go into the stretch, I breathe out. As soon as that breath out has happened and I'm ready to intake, I come out of the stretch and I breathe out again. And then I come out of the stretch and I breathe out again. So I'm holding my stretch only for when I'm actively breathing out. Okay, so let's just do 2 on one side and then compare. All right, so here we go. So I'm breathing in. I'm ready to do my lunging calf muscle stretch. My knee's going to be straight, so we're stretching the gastrocnemius this time. I breathe in and I breathe out and go into the stretch. And then once my breath is fully out, I breathe in again. And I breathe out for the duration. Like you're giving the tension its exit papers and saying all the reasons why I'd hold my breath. Let's do 2 more as I share a bit more. All the reasons I'd hold my breath, like I don't want the bear to smell me or hear me, which my breathing would draw attention to. Telling myself there's no stress here or I wouldn't be breathing out. All right, now go ahead and compare that on the 2 sides. Now, I know you're going to maybe think, well, of course I just stretched it. It's going to feel a bit better. Really what you can do on your own time is do a normal calf muscle stretch and then do the breathing sort of pumping stretch and see if you feel a difference. I believe you will feel a difference when you do the one with the breath. And to me, the science of that makes sense. I'm telling my body, you don't need to have this reflex of contraction. We're not running, we're not fighting. I'm not holding my breath because of a threat that's right there. Okay, so I do my stretches differently once I learned this. I don't believe it's just in the calf muscles. I think it's primarily there because, again, getting ready for the boxing around or the running. But I would do that with all my stretches where, you know, dynamic stretching instead of all the static stretching. I'm not here to just tell my nervous system to let go and sort of surrender to this position I'm in. I'm telling my nervous system to let go of any stress. All right. So I know you probably all want to do the other side. Shall we do the other side before we carry on? It's kind of like a weird torture, right? Where you go, let's just do it on the right side. And other dancers are like, but I got to do the other side too. Okay. So 4 breaths. Let's just do that. I think that's what I got to do. So I'm breathing in when I'm not stretching. I put the heel down as I breathe out. Now for me, I know I'm breathing out because I'm talking. Now, of course, you would also do that. So again, heel up when I breathe in. You'd also do the same thing for a soleus stretch. So I'd be then in my gastroc stretch for the breathe in and then breathe out into the knee bend of the back stretching leg. More. So now a lot of times we do our big stretches, say after bar, or ideally also the end of class. I would suggest a little bit of a calf muscle warm up, you know, so there's some blood flow there. And then just do some of these gentle breath out ones near the beginning of class. Again, let's get our students into a learning state so they're not in their reptilian brain or their even mammalian brain feeling stressed. Okay, so I hope that felt good and is just a new little tweak on how to feel different. Okay, now back to a little bit more about the brain and then some testing about what your brain profile is like. Oh, did it again. There we go. Why does it not? There we go. Okay, so the neocortex, the new brain, all our rational thinking, we've got our two sides. Now, there's a little bit of debate about this. It seems to go back and forth in the brain world there. The brain is incredibly adaptable, you know, so if there was a stroke or something, there's a lot of parts of the brain that can take over for the missing pieces. But at the same time, it's still originally designed without needing to deal with trauma, where there's a bit of, well, this does this best and this does this best. Now, you can look at that a little bit more later if you'd like, but just know, my understanding anyway, is that the right brain is the one where a lot of the functions develop first. So how I first looked at it is it's sort of like our childlike brain. It's got the creativity and the imagination, very present in the now, very big picture. Details mean nothing to a 5-year-old, right? They're not dealing with the logic at all. Very much about just language, but from a feeling perspective. You know, that idea of it's not what you said, it's how you said it. They're picking up on the emotional context of everything. They might be going with their intuition. And then around the age of 7, the development of the left brain starts, where it's a lot more about the analytical and logical reasoning. Things go in order so I can build things in a linear fashion, much more aware of the passage of time. We need both. But when you're trying to go, is this a bit more of a right brain thing or more of a left brain thing? Think more about who you were or thinking of your students and the skills they have under the age of 7 is the right brain. Now, because left brain is about the analysis and the language and all the math and everything like that, it gets incredibly focused on in school, okay? Which makes sense. Suddenly we're having to analyze all this stuff. But we have a problem with that, which is we don't want to become just left-brained in order to be academically successful. We want both parts always working together. And that's that idea of integration. So here's our integrated, is that all parts work together. The two hemispheres, little picture on that, that there's that brain bridge. It's called the corpus callosum, that is connected. And now I've got in there, as you can see, that there's a little bit about what stress is. There's positive stress, there's negative stress. Positive stress would be, stress rather, is like the challenge, the right type of challenge that makes me excited for learning something. Negative stress, obviously, hopefully not the bear, but versions of it where it's something isn't feeling safe. And that could even just be a self-esteem thing. Somebody said something negative. I had a fight with mom in the car before I got dropped off to class. Things like that that make negative stress. Please also note that learning itself is stressful. So this idea of needing to keep the two hemispheres together, super important, okay, before you even start class. Now, let's look at, let me go back a picture. Yeah, let's look at what happens to you, and then you can understand your students more. If I've got my two hemispheres, that little brain bridge picture you just saw of the two sides working together, my right brain doing this type of stuff, my left brain doing this, they work together. So I'm not just emotional or I'm not just analytical. I have the balance of both. That's in an ideal, integrated, only good stress or no stress state of mind. But what happens when you're under stress? Well, when you're under stress, something needs to happen. I need to run, let's say, which means I need to have a first leg to go. Or if you imagine, you know, people getting out of a burning building, somebody's got to go out the door first. If you toss me something, one hand has to grab up to take it. So we have been wired to have what's called our dominance pattern, where there's always a leader. That leader shows up. Okay. Hello. I can't push him away. He's my foster, and he had a dental appointment yesterday, so he's being a little clingy. Sorry. There you go. Okay. Now where was I? Okay, got distracted there. My mammalian brain, my emotional brain got all distracted by him. We have a stressful situation. We need a leader in order to be able to take action. Okay, we need a lead eye, a few little tests to find out what your brain profile is. Keep in mind, this is when you're under stress. Now, I don't want to stress you out, so we're just going to try a few little tests to do it. Now, chances are you probably know which hand you would consider your dominant hand. However, I will tell you, remember I gave the story of my left ankle, or sorry, my left arch lifting because my nervous system got organized finally. I'm a little confused now and wonder if I was actually meant to be left-handed my whole life. Because now I start to reach out, say for my water bottle or even to a door with my left hand, although I would have told you I was right-handed my whole life. But in most school systems, particularly say my mom's generation, she was meant to be left-handed, but got forced to be right-handed in the school system in England. I don't think they force it as much anymore, but there's often a lot of modeling that young children see, or their parents hand, you know, the spoon for eating into their right hand or something. So handedness is an interesting one. So right now, pick up whatever side you think it is. You could be right. Hold the potential possibility, though, that maybe the more integrative work you do, it might switch. Now, I'm not going to ever change the hand that I write with because it's now a refined skill, but maybe I do more things with my left hand than I've ever done before. Okay, and that actually keeps my brain a little happier. So we probably don't really need to do hand, but let's now do eye. Okay, so you need to find a spot on the wall quite far away from you, and you're going to take your hands to far out. So I'm fully extended here, and I'm making a little triangle. My thing that I'm seeing, let's say, I'll use my lipstick. My thing that I'm seeing is going to be in the middle of that triangle. So look for a spot in the distance. So I'm going to look out my window while we talk you through it. So my car that I'm looking at, with both eyes open, my car is sitting in the middle of that triangle. Now let's all do the same side at the same time. I'm going to close my right eye. Now, did the object that you were looking at move or appear to move? Like you go, it's not in the middle anymore. If that's the case, if it moved, that means that your left eye is not your dominant eye, because if it was, it would still be there. So open both eyes again, check that it's still in the center. Now let's close our left eye. Now for me, that means, of course, oh, hey, my right eye is still open. And in this case, the car didn't move. That means my right eye was the focusing eye. So let's do that one more time so you're clear. When I close my right eye, if it moved with that eye closed, it means that eye is the dominant eye. Now close your left eye. If it moved, it means we've taken away our dominant eye. The dominant eye is the one that does the focusing, and then the other eye does like the blending and sort of a bit more three-dimensional as well, right? Okay, so the eye closed, if it moves, then you know that was your dominant. So if for me, my right eye is dominant, so that it's with both eyes open, that thing's in the middle. With my right eye open, left eye closed, it's still in the middle. I didn't lose my focusing eye. Okay, now for your ear, it isn't always what side you'd put your phone up to. If we had the pleasure of being in person, we'd go into partners, and I'd have somebody stand behind you and whisper. Which side you would turn to go, huh? To try to get a better listen. Which side would you turn to? You'd be presenting them with your dominant ear. So you could imagine instead now you're, because we don't have the partner behind us, maybe you're eavesdropping. You're going to go up against a wall and you're like, to hear a little better, which ear would you put up? To go, oh. Okay, it might be the one you put your phone to, but it isn't for me. I think it's because of my handedness. All right, so a little nicer when we're in person. I know we could do it better. Now, we've talked about your hand. Now your leg, your way to test. And this one's a little challenging for dancers. We get so used to leading with our right leg. Let's see if that's a real lead or not. Again, if we were in partners, I'd have somebody push you. In this case, you're just going to have to kind of surprise yourself. So you're going to take a rise and then just do like a timber forward and see which leg shoots out as the lead to catch you. Okay, so I'm taking my rise. I start to go timber. Which leg leads? Which leg catches me? Okay, that would be your dominant leg. All right, I can see you've disappeared from the screen. You're all trying that. That's great. Okay, now your dominant hemisphere. This one's much trickier because when we're under stress, we don't always know what's going on. We can't always see how we respond, but we have a dominant hemisphere as well. And I'm happy to share more on that, but of course I'm aware of time. So I can't share all of this right now. The point that you really need to get, if I have a dominant hemisphere and a dominant eye, ear, hand, and leg, well, how does that pattern work for me when I'm under stress? And in this case, I'm usually talking about the negative stress that kicks up our survival and gets us out of our thinking brain. Well, here's how it plays out from my understanding. Because we need to have a lead, we don't need this whole big picture context of right, left brain working together. We just need one hemisphere to be leading and to kind of be on. And studies have shown that your non-dominant hemisphere shuts down by about 80% when you're under stress. And that by that, I mean, they're even looking at like blood flow scans and things like that, like I guess imaging that can show this. Now, most of you probably know that your right hemisphere controls, say, your left hand, and vice versa, that there's this cross. Okay, so let's do an example. Let's say I was right-brained under stress. That would mean, or just say right now, I'm right-brained. Okay, I'm right-brained. If I was left-eyed, that could still be there for me when I'm under stress. Okay, so I'll say that again. If I'm right-brained, my right brain's going to control my left eye. My left brain's controlling my right eye. There's that cross. So right brain on when I'm under stress because I'm right brain dominant. Oh, great. This side goes down. Well, that would be a problem for my right eye, perhaps, wouldn't it? For the processing of visual information from the right eye. And not even just say the right eye, you'd still say that teaming. And this would be like where people, I can imagine a car accident where somebody says, I'm sorry, I really didn't see the truck. And you're like, you didn't see the semi truck coming down the road? Like, how, what? And no, I didn't see it. I was under so much stress. Maybe I'm lost in a new city and I literally, my eyes saw it, but my brain didn't process it. So in a way, I didn't see it. Okay. Now, that happens to our dancers. So now let's say I'm right-eyed and I'm right-brained. Oh, okay. Well, I need my left brain on to help with my visual processing. But when I'm under stress, if this shuts down a portion, there goes my visual processing. And that goes down through the whole system. So if I was right-brained and right-eyed and right-eared, that would mean when I'm under stress, I don't process the visual very well and I don't process the auditory very well. Oh no, that's a problem, wanting to dance in time to the music or to hear any cues. When it comes to what's going to happen with the handedness, you can think of it not just my handedness, but if you think handedness is actually, say, writing, therefore it links to your communication, which could also mean verbally. So if somebody was really stressed and you're asking them what's wrong and they can't seem to speak, they can't tell you what's wrong, that's probably what's going on, is that the side that's required, let's say, for that communication channel to be open has diminished to the degree that they're not able to communicate well until they get out of stress. Now, here's what I find super duper interesting, and I'm going to admit that it's a theory that I have that I'd love people in, this Radiant tribe to try out and see what you think. My leg, if I have, let's say, a right leg lead, okay, so I've got my dominance, that's fine. But what if I'm under stress and you're asking me to lead with my left leg? Maybe I've got some freezing that goes on. And here's my theory. I know that turnout's a big deal in the dance community. I'm a ballet teacher, I get it. We've all constructed differently. There's a lot of work to be done on understanding everybody's structure and really developing it slowly and steadily. But I really don't want to blame turnout for the chronic injuries that we have, the chronic hip injuries that seem to run rampant in the dance world. The hip replacements that I hear for like 40-year-old dance teachers, that's ridiculous to me. And I go, what if I'm in a frozen state? Not just one side shut down, but a frozen state on a neurological level, but I'm moving anyway. Is that kind of doing this, say, hip flexion, even just a taunting, is that kind of like driving with the park brake on all the time? I believe it might be. And that driving with the park brake on all the time is what actually is sort of that pernicious little wear and tear that confuses people as to, well, my technique seems to be fine. So why am I having just this hip discomfort all the time? What's going on there? I think it could be that the dancer in question is in an unintegrated brain state a lot of the time and participating anyway. And that therefore they're just sort of grinding their gears a little bit. So that's what I'm really interested in discovering more. Okay, now we're coming to the end of our time, and that's just been a little drop in the bucket. Let's do one more integrative movement, then check our little dimensions, and then I'll let you know a little bit about what you could do to know more, because clearly there's a lot more. And that more would be learning about creating the learning environment. I do want to show you a fun slide coming up. I'll just look at how far ahead it is. Okay, about creating the proper learning environment, as well as some movements we can do. So I'm sharing with you right now another movement you can do to help integrate. So let's do that. I like to start with when in doubt, you've got the idea of releasing something like that calf one, releasing some of the energy blockages like the rubbing we did earlier. And then another one you can layer and then have these three together is something that integrates the left and right half so that I'm pulling that brain bridge together. It's like I'm shoring it up, making it more earthquake proof, or going in for some repairs there and making it a little stronger so those two sides talk together better and therefore are shutting down of one side. Oh, maybe that doesn't show up so much. I can keep my auditory and visual, my communication, and my participation much more active, no matter what's going on. Okay, so a very simple one, which dancers buy into because it just seems like a nice exercise, would be something called a lazy 8. So that's like the number 8, kind of an 8 there. It's called a lazy 8 because you can imagine it's resting. Okay, now all we're going to do is track this. Now we're going to do 3 versions of tracking this. Okay, we're going to go up to the left. Now I know I might be mirror image to you right now, but I'm going to go up to the left and around. it is important that when I cross center that I'm going up versus going down. So those of you RAD teachers being around for a while, the grade 2 of this, arm swings, whatever, that's going down through the center. For our purposes right now, we don't want to do that. So let's go up through the left and around. And I'm going to do it side to side. Because I'm a dancer, I'm going to give it a nice little swoop and transfer of weight. So that's just it. That's actually an integrative movement. It would be a really nice one to do before you get started with the rest of your class or backstage. So that's one version. Okay, I'm sure you're all doing that beautifully. Now here's another version. To get the eyes going, I'm going to put my hands together and I'm going to look at my thumbs at about this far away. I'm going to move my arms in a figure 8, going again up through the center. My eyes are going to follow. That means my head stays steady. My eyes are going to follow. Going up and around, up and around. Okay. So doing the lazy 8 with just your eyes. Yeah, my arms are moving, of course, too. Now I can do it even smaller. Now I'm going to do it with just the tip of my nose. And this time you're actually going to move. So I'm going to do just this tiny little figure 8 with my nose. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of, think of it like you're turning yourself into a little bobblehead there. Okay, you're doing a little integration. I'm going back and forth at the very top in here, which is my balance system. It's helping my vestibular, but it's also releasing some of the armoring and holding that would happen when I'm stressed right at the top of the neck. And I happen to believe, or actually I'd say no, that when the top joint there has got some freeze, that is going to affect its way down the entire spine. The resiliency of all the curves is going to be diminished. And what happens when the resiliency of the curves of my spine diminish is I'm going to lose my dynamic posture. And boom, I'm probably going to start holding my posture in a way that holds my breath. Boom, triggered the stress response right there as soon as I hold my breath. Okay, so a fun thing to do with students would be to even balance on one leg while you do that. Just to ensure that they are trying to keep a sense of dynamic balance. And again, I know I'm breathing because I'm talking. You can help them breathe. I'd even have them talk, honestly. Why not? Get some airflow while doing that. Okay, and then I know, oh, maybe my spine's gonna be alive, my pelvis is alive, all the function. Again, I'll send you with the links, the dynamic body stuff, and you can understand how important the curves and the movement of the curves of the spine are to everything. Happy knees, happy feet, everything. Okay, and then I'm just going to share you one last slide before I put it down. Look, I had so much for you, but that's okay. Being over-prepared is better than being under-prepared. Okay, so I shared with you some movements because I wanted you to have that key takeaway. Please also know, though, that this to me is the big chunk that I'm contributing from Brain Gym into the dance world. Brain Gym taught me all sorts of stuff about the brain, obviously, and these movements. There's actually 26 movements in the basic level of Brain Gym. We've now done like 5, I think. So just a tiny tip of the iceberg for you. But the piece that takes all that work and the concepts of it into the dance studio teaching application is here. The students need to have a pleasing learning environment, proper progressions that are too big a leap, stress, everything crumbles. Proper use of language, something as basic as telling people what to do rather than what not to do. I want to be in a state where I'm moving toward things. When I move away from something like what not to do, that's like me running away from the bear. Okay, as soon as you move away from something. So we even could talk about corrections versus guidance. Proper expectations, that goes a lot with progressions, but also the expectations that you're setting out, social and emotional and physical for your students. Teaching the awareness and the body awareness, of course. Lots of different levels of awareness. Anyway, social engagement and community, making my mammalian brain happy so I can imprint memories. Now that's a piece that's often not done much in traditional ballet classes. There's sort of a no talking, no, just boom. Yeah, we're taking class together, but it still feels like a pretty lonely pursuit. But your students will show you they don't want it to be that way. The constant need for their social is them telling you, this is how I learn best. It's not, you know, bad behavior or anything there. I actually think that the best teachers are the 3 and 4-year-olds. They're not trying to behave themselves to be good students. They're just showing you this is how a brain learns: curiosity and fun and play and interaction. So if we kept that alive, say through the teen years, I think we'd have a lot less chronic injuries. But that's my soapbox moment about that. Then imagery and intention, full body. Imagery takes place in the right brain. That helps to balance the bias of school in the left brain that your students probably showed up with. So being really good at using imagery in class and guiding the intention. Noticing, to change our idea of noticing from just being noticing what that feels like in the body. How did that feel in terms of what muscle did you work? To noticing your brain state. Are you in an integrated state where things are flowing, or can you feel the different ways that stress is showing up? And that's something we don't have time for going through today because I just chose to do a little short intro here. And then goal setting. That primes the brain for a greater context of how to learn everything. So I do have some workshops coming up. The first one coming up is a spotlight on the imagery that's coming up in July. Actually, I'm gonna stop my screen share now so that we get back to just me. All right, so if you're wanting to learn more, and I hope you do, because I really just gave you a total little tiny nugget here. So what did we cover? Well, the brain under stress, good stress, negative stress, very different. A negative stress brain, not good for learning. And I believe not good for the body. I think that's a major cause of burnout and injuries and whatnot, as well as frustration from everybody's point of view. So maybe that's your new piece for today, going, oh, I got to pay attention to the learning environment. You can go back, learn a few of those moments, or those movements that I gave you. But I do have a one-day course coming up. It is for July 6th, which I believe is a Tuesday. It's a one-day course. I will, with the replay link, of course, send you the information on this. Should you want to go in a little deeper and kind of learn a few more movements and get into more about what does right brain do versus left brain? What does an unintegrated student look like? And how can you tell? And what are the tweaks that you can start to do in class with your approach? And they might not be changes, they might just be tweaks to help ensure that that pleasing learning environment is taking place. Sorry, it seems so unprofessional, but again, he's a foster and he just had a dental appointment and he's needing his love and attention. So hopefully you'll just see me as a loving person here, not distracted and unprofessional. Okay, so there's that one day coming up. It runs from 10 to 4. It will be recorded as well if you're not able to come live, although if you're able to come live, there can be a lot more interaction, of course. Then some of these concepts, like in the pleasing, the imagery, for instance, I've got an imagery one day all about how to develop imagery. Then, of course, there's the difference between knowing you're developing imagery and developing anatomically correct functional imagery. That's kind of another side of it. I've got a course of that coming up. So those are the two offerings coming up right now in the next few weeks. And then also, of course, just to let you know, I'm happy to do workshops as kind of like a guest teacher that shows up, like in summer school or something, or whatever's going on. I guess some of you down in the Southern Hemisphere there, it's not your summer yet. Okay. So I'm happy to come in, quote unquote, in studio to do some of this work. When the pandemic first hit, last June, actually, I did some in-person group balances is what we call them, where we're checking to see how these students are sort of unbalanced by the stress of it. And we did group balances at a local studio here. And I did it online. It was very effective to help them manage their stress about the whole situation. And that was really cool. as well as just dealing specifically with maybe stress about performance or stress about an exam, things like that, okay? So there's lots more that you can learn if this has piqued your interest. Hopefully you still feel like you have some content you can take away and use right away. And with that, I'm going to close it out and open it up for Q&A. And I'm happy to stay and chit chat as long as you are able. If any of you have to go, I totally get that. We booked out a certain amount of time, but I'm happy to be here for a Q&A. So I'm going to stop the recording so that nobody feels like they can't come on for their question because of not wanting to be on the long-term recording. All right, so thank you for joining me and hope to see you again.